You came here because the mind is still running. Feel the back of your skull settle into the pillow right now. If there is a light you can reach without getting up, turn it off. Phone face down. What you are feeling tonight has a precise name. Your shoulders may still be carrying the shape of the day. Jaw set, perhaps, or a breath that has not quite reached the bottom of your lungs yet. The mind is circling, a conversation replayed, a concern held just out of reach, the tomorrow that keeps arriving tonight. All of it seen, all of it known. 2,500 years ago, the teachers gave this exact condition a name, the fourth hindrance, restlessness and worry. A condition so consistently present in the human mind that they traced its every layer, its origins, its body side and its mind side, and the precise conditions under which the whole pattern reliably dissolves. They left a clear passage through every layer of it, through the circling thoughts, through the tight shoulders, through the shallow breath. And that passage meets you exactly as you are. That path comes to meet you now, through breath, through the body's own deep knowing, through teachings that have guided the restless human mind to stillness for 25 centuries and more. Get comfortable. Lie down if you can. Wherever in the world tonight finds you, you are welcome here. The ancient teachers observed the human mind the way a naturalist observes weather, with patience, with precision, tracking how conditions arise, how they cluster, how they pass. What emerged from centuries of this observation was a map of interior conditions, recurring states that appear in the practitioner's mind and, when unrecognized, veil the clarity that is the mind's natural disposition. 5 of these conditions were identified and mapped with particular care. They are called the 5 hindrances, Panca Nivarana, the 5 coverings, 5 states that veil the mind, the way clouds veil the sky. The first is sensual desire, Kama Chanda, the pull of the senses outward, the mind that reaches for stimulation and cannot settle into stillness. The second is ill will, Vyapada, the heat of aversion, the mind clenched around something it wants gone, or changed, or other than it is. The third is sloth and torpor, Dhinamidha, the grey heaviness that clouds perception, the state in which even the impulse toward clarity feels blunted and remote. The fourth is restlessness and worry, Udhaka Kukuka, the agitated mind that cannot hold still, that circles and replays and rehearses with a restless industry that finds no resolution. The fifth is doubt, Vichikicha, the paralyzing uncertainty that cannot commit to a direction, that holds the practitioner suspended between possibilities, unable to move. 5 hindrances, 5 recurring conditions the teachers observed in practitioners across every century, every kind of life, every degree of experience. The seasoned practitioner encounters these states. The first-time practitioner encounters them too. The careful, sincere, dedicated person. Their mind holds these conditions at different times, under different circumstances, with the consistency of something that belongs to the human mind itself, rather than to the character of any particular person. The Buddha mapped them because what appears in everyone deserves to be understood, met with recognition, held with knowledge, approached with the ease that familiarity makes possible. Tonight, one of them has arrived. The fourth, Udahaka Kukucha. The Pali name holds two qualities together because in practice, these two are almost always found in each other's company, the one sustaining the other. Udahaka is restlessness, a quality of agitation in the mind itself, a friction that moves without direction, a constant turbulence that cannot find a resting place. Kukucha is worry, the gnawing companion, the quality that returns to the unresolved, that rehearses conversations already concluded, that holds a concern and keeps circling back to check whether anything has changed. Together, they produce a particular texture of wakefulness, diffuse, exhausting, neither sharp nor purposeful, a motion that serves no resolution and finds no natural ending on its own terms. This is what has been present in this room since the light went off. This is what the mind has been doing. The Buddha described the fourth hindrance using a simile that has been carried forward for 25 centuries because it holds the whole teaching inside itself. Imagine a bowl of water, clear water, in a clean bowl, capable of reflection. In perfect stillness, that water shows you the sky above and the face looking in from below. Now set wind upon it. Let the surface be stirred. Let ripples move across it. Let the water break into constant small motion. You look into that bowl and your face is gone. Not because the water has changed its nature, but because the agitation at the surface has made reflection temporarily impossible. The water is clear beneath the disturbance. Clarity is the nature of the water. The wind is a condition. It arrived. It is present now, and conditions that arrive also pass. This simile comes from the Anguttara Nikaya, the fifth group, the collection of fives, where the Buddha pairs each hindrance with an image chosen precisely for what it reveals. For the fourth hindrance, agitated water was chosen because agitation differs from damage in one essential respect. The bowl is intact. The water has lost nothing of its nature. Only the surface is in motion, and that motion is a condition, temporary, arising through causes, capable of settling when those causes are no longer fed. The wind is not the bowl. The restlessness is not you. Think of a night when the mind was completely at rest, when you set something down and it stayed set down, when the thoughts slowed of their own accord and sleep arrived without effort. That mind and this mind are the same mind. The clarity is still present. It has not gone anywhere. A condition has arrived on its surface, the way weather arrives on a lake, and the same lake that holds tonight's wind has held many still nights before and will hold them again. The clarity does not need to be created tonight. It only needs to be allowed, and allowing begins with knowing clearly what condition has arrived and what it is. In the Ānāpānasati Sutta, the fruits of the contemplative life, one of the long discourses of the Digha Nikaya, the Buddha offered King Ajatasattu a second way of seeing the hindrances. He asked the king to imagine 5 constraining states, owing a crushing debt, being consumed by fever, locked in a prison, enslaved without freedom of movement, crossing a waterless desert with no shelter. Each of these, the debt, the fever, the prison, the slavery, the desert, is a condition, a temporary circumstance arising from particular causes, with the capacity to resolve when those causes change. The hindrances, the Buddha said, are like those states. When the mind moves through a hindrance, it is moving through a condition, one that arose through causes, as all conditions do, and one that will ease when the causes sustaining it are no longer fed. The 4th hindrance arrived tonight through a particular and understandable set of circumstances, the accumulated weight of a full day, the concerns that remain unresolved, the natural tendency of the nervous system to amplify the unfinished when the active demands of the day have ended and darkness and quiet leave the mind with nowhere to direct its considerable and loyal energy. These are conditions. Conditions, by their nature, change. And there is a distinction. 1. The whole Buddhist path turns on, between a condition that has arisen and a truth about who you are. The 4th hindrance is the former, a condition that arose through circumstances, with causes that can be understood and a nature that can be known, and a passage through that has been mapped with extraordinary care by teachers who have sat with this exact terrain. You are not broken tonight. You are experiencing a known condition in a human mind. You know the texture of tonight's version already. The conversation you have returned to 3 times since the light went off. The mind has found something in it cannot quite release, something it keeps turning over without dissolving, wearing smooth without arriving anywhere new. The task you have been running through in the dark, adding to it and revising it, and imagining its complications at the hour when no actual revision can be made. The worry that you addressed before sleep, settled as well as it could be settled, that has arrived back at the edge of awareness with the quiet reliability of tide, returning with a faithfulness that would be touching in other circumstances, but here, in this dark, is simply exhausting. This is udhaka kukucha, recognized from the inside. What distinguishes the 4th hindrance from purposeful thought is the quality of non-arrival. Purposeful thought moves towards something, a decision formed, a concern addressed and put down, a clarity reached. The 4th hindrance circles. It does not arrive because arriving is not its present function. Its nature in this state is motion, and that motion has become self-sustaining, drawing energy from the restlessness it generates. The mind following this loop has sent a continuous report to the body. Something urgent remains unfinished. The body, receiving this report faithfully, has stayed ready, shoulders held, breath shallow, jaw set, the whole system maintained at a level of alertness that was entirely appropriate at noon and has no work left to do now. Ajahn Brahm, in his teaching on the hindrances, makes a point worth carrying into this room, The restless mind is a mind that has not yet received the right understanding. And the right understanding is specific. The mind is not in danger. The problems it rehearses at midnight are no more soluble now than they were at noon. The conversations it returns to are complete. They concluded. They occurred. Their content has not been changed by a single revisitation. The fourth hindrance is the mind working with great and faithful industry at a task that has already been finished. The day is done. The concerns have been carried as far as tonight can carry them. What remains belongs to tomorrow. When this is actually seen, when it lands as understanding rather than merely passes as concept, something eases. The effort softens. A pause opens in the activity. The body, receiving a different report from the mind, begins, very slowly, in its own time, to release what it has been holding. In the Pali teachings on the hindrances, there is a specific practice for the moment when a hindrance is present. Name it. Not to condemn it, not to demand that it leave, simply to recognize what is here. The fourth hindrance. Something shifts in the naming. Before the naming, the restlessness occupied the whole field. The mind was entirely inside it, circling because it had no position from which to observe what was happening. The naming introduces a witness, the part of awareness that can see a condition rather than simply inhabit it. That witnessing awareness is already still. The observer of agitation is not itself agitated, exactly as the water in the depths of the bowl remains undisturbed while the surface moves. Practitioners who work with this recognition over time describe something consistent, a small settling in the chest, a sense that the territory has become known. The mind does not immediately go quiet. The hindrance does not vanish with the naming, but something changes in the relationship to it. The quality of bewilderment lifts, and what remains is a condition that is present and seen, held by an awareness that the condition itself cannot reach. This is what the teachers mean when they say the knowing is already the beginning of release. The awareness that sees the hindrance and the hindrance that is seen are not the same thing. There is space between them now. The teaching points to this seeing as the beginning of the path through. Every attempt to force stillness directly, to silence the restless mind by pressing down on it, to command sleep by demanding that the thoughts stop, adds pressure to an already activated system. Pressure applied to the surface of agitated water produces more ripples, not fewer. The teaching moves in another direction entirely, toward recognition. Seeing the agitation clearly, knowing it as a condition, holding it with the equanimity of someone who has been given a name for what they are experiencing. When the fourth hindrance is known in this way, its energy begins to change. This is an account of a reliable interior process observed in practitioners across centuries. The hindrance that is recognized is no longer the unnamed force that fills the whole room. It is a condition, seen, named, held at the small distance that recognition creates. Still present, perhaps, but seen. And in being seen, no longer entirely in possession of the field. The fourth hindrance, I know what this is. The teachers who passed this understanding down were working from a principle at the foundation of the entire Buddhist path. The first noble truth, dukkha, the texture of unsatisfactoriness that runs beneath ordinary human experience, is not introduced as a problem to be eliminated before practice can begin. The instruction is to know it, to see its presence clearly, to understand its nature. The knowing itself is the first movement of the path, and this knowing alone begins to shift the relationship between the practitioner and whatever condition is present. Recognizing the fourth hindrance tonight, seeing it clearly as a temporary arising in a mind that is clear by nature, is already the path in motion. Something has shifted in this room in the time since this teaching first reached you. The restlessness may still be moving, but your relationship to it has changed. Where there was only the circling, there is now an awareness of the circling. Where there was bewilderment, there is a name. Where there was the experience of being caught in something without origin, there is now the teaching. This arose through conditions, and what arises through conditions can cease through conditions. That last teaching deserves to settle in the room. The fourth hindrance is not a permanent state. It is not the truth of this mind tonight, or the truth of who you are. It arose through the weight of a full day, through concerns the quiet has amplified, through the particular way this condition uses darkness and stillness as the circumstances it needs. And what arises through conditions can cease through conditions. From this teaching, a question forms naturally. If the hindrance arises through conditions, what exactly are those conditions? What is the chain of small interior movements that carries the mind from a simple, neutral moment into the circling, gripping loop of the fourth hindrance? And at which point in that chain does leverage exist? A place where a single shift in attention can change the direction of everything that follows. The Buddha mapped that chain too, with the same precision he brought to the hindrances themselves. He traced it step by step, cause by cause, all the way back to the first moment of contact between the mind and an object. That map is called dependent origination, paticca samuppada, and within it lies a specific gap, small as a breath, precise as a doorway, the space between the moment the mind touches something and the moment it decides to hold on. That gap is where tonight's rest becomes possible, and it is exactly where we go next. Something brushes the edge of awareness. It may be so small that thought is too large a word for it. A flicker, a half image, a sense fragment arriving in the dark without invitation and without announcement. This is the first event in what the teachers mapped with such care. In the Pali teaching it has a name, phassa, contact, the moment when consciousness meets an object. Not yet a thought held and examined, not yet worry, not yet the loop, a single point of meeting between the mind and something arising in its field. What follows arrives immediately, before any deliberate response is possible. The contact carries a tone, a felt quality, a charge, a property of the meeting itself, arising with the contact, inseparable from it. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The Pali word is Vedana, feeling tone, the quality that every moment of conscious contact carries as an inseparable companion. The flicker in the dark, if it arrives carrying an unpleasant charge, a trace of something unfinished, a whisper of, "This has not been resolved, this is not yet settled," has already set a direction before any decision has been made. Not because the mind chose to move in that direction, because the feeling tone orients attention the way a compass needle orients to a pole, automatically, through the structure of the moment itself, prior to any act of will. Then tanha, craving. The word requires unpacking before it becomes useful here, because in the context of the insomnia loop, it does not arrive as the large and obvious desire the word usually conjures. At midnight, in the dark, tanha is quiet, almost inconspicuous. It is the mind moving toward the unpleasant thing with one purpose: to resolve it, to fix it, to change it, to arrange things so the unpleasant quality of Vedana is altered. Craving for resolution, craving for the thought to conclude, craving for the unsettled to settle. These are all tanha, movements in the mind away from what is present towards some preferred arrangement that does not yet exist. And then, before the next breath, upadana, grasping, the consolidation of craving into something held. The mind has now taken the thought up in earnest. It is examining it, turning it, trying angles, building and rebuilding the case, looking for the formulation that will finally make the unresolved thing yield. What began as a flicker has become an object the mind is in active relationship with, investing its full attention and its considerable energy. This relationship resists ending. The holding feels like agency, like working towards something that matters. But the working has no terminus. The resolution being sought is not available in the dark at this hour. The mind receives nothing that concludes, holds on, and tries again. 4 moments: phassa, vedana, tanha, upadana, contact, feeling tone, craving, grasping. A chain running from the first barely noticed flutter of something arriving in awareness to the circling loop that has occupied this room for the past hour. This is the Buddhist map of the insomnia loop. The teaching comes from the Nidana Sutta, the connected discourses on conditionality, among the oldest and most foundational collections in the Pali Canon. Here the Buddha laid out in careful sequence the full chain of dependent origination. Paticca samuppada, the principle that all conditioned phenomena arise in dependence on conditions. A 12-link account of how each arising provides the ground for the next arising, how the whole fabric of conditioned experience is woven from this single thread. The full chain runs from ignorance at its deepest root through to the suffering that appears at the surface of an ordinary human life. A span the tradition sometimes traces across lifetimes, across the broad arc of conditioned existence. But the same conditionality governs the span of a single evening. The same chain the Buddha traced across the breadth of existence is running right now, in this room, in the sequence of events that carried this mind from a first moment of contact to an hour of unresolved circling. Scale changes. The structure does not. This is the key insight, and it changes how the restless night can be understood. The chain is not fate. It is conditionality. Each link arises because of the one before it, which means each link also depends on the one before it. Where the preceding condition is absent or weakened, the next link does not arise with the same force. The chain cannot run without its conditions, any more than a fire can burn without fuel. This is not a philosophy proposed for comfort. It is a structural observation about how the mind works. One the Buddha made through direct investigation and then invited practitioners to verify in their own experience. By direct looking, in the texture of their own arising nights, through honest observation, the chain runs, but it runs through conditions, and conditions can be met differently. Recognize the chain in the texture of tonight. Think of the moment, perhaps only 30 minutes ago, perhaps at the first moment the light went off, when a thought arrived carrying a trace of unease, the shape of an exchange that ended ambiguously, a task left undone, a name arriving in the dark without context and with a slightly unsettled quality that the mind could not quite let pass. The phone buzzing earlier in the evening with a message not yet properly resolved, the feeling tone of obligation carrying forward through the hours into the dark. Each of these was phassa, contact, the meeting of awareness with an arising object. With each contact came Vedana, immediately, unchosen, unpleasant, a tightening, a quality of this is not yet settled. And then the mind moved toward, reaching for what would resolve it. Tanha, and then the holding, the circling, the returning. Upadana, the loop. The whole sequence runs faster than language can follow. It runs below the level at which deliberate choices feel like choices. And because it runs below that level, it does not present itself as a sequence of linked events. It arrives as a single, undivided fact. The mind is circling. It cannot stop. This is how tonight is. The conditioned process presents itself as the nature of things rather than as the way things are arising. The temporary appears permanent. The contingent appears inevitable. In this misidentification, in the taking of an arising process for a fixed truth, lies what the teachers identified as the root of the suffering in the loop. The mind does not suffer from contact. It does not suffer from feeling tone. It suffers from the belief, running below examination, that what has arisen is what permanently is. In the Ānāpānasati Sutta, the great discourse on the destruction of craving in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha gave a precise account of how consciousness itself arises. Consciousness, he taught, is not a fixed, independent presence waiting behind the eyes to receive the world. It is not a stable, unmoved observer looking out at experience from a neutral position. Consciousness arises at the point of meeting, generated at the contact between a sense faculty and its object, and it arises already carrying the tone of that meeting, already Vedana, already oriented. There is no pure awareness standing undisturbed behind the contact, receiving it without response. The meeting and the knowing and the feeling tone are arising together as a single event. The loop is not entered from outside by a separate self doing the worrying. It is generated at the point of contact itself. This matters because it explains, with precision, why force does not work. The instruction "stop thinking about it" is aimed at upadana, the fourth link, after the chain has already been running through contact, feeling tone, and craving. The will arrives 3 steps too late and presses against something already formed and held. Force at this point does not interrupt the chain. It creates a new contact event. A new contact carries its own Vedana, the unpleasant tone of effort and resistance, the quality of "I am fighting this and it is not working." From that new unpleasant tone, the chain begins again with added momentum. This is why pressing down on the restless mind makes the restlessness louder. The pressure is not an interruption of the chain, it is a new link in it. Thich Nhat Hanh, in his teaching on dependent co-arising in ordinary life, notes that conditionality contains within itself the seed of its own loosening. Because each link depends on the link before it, the weakening of any condition changes what the next link receives. The chain can thin. It can lose the conditions it requires to form with full force. And the place where thinning is most possible is the gap between Vedana and Tanha, the space between the feeling tone arriving and the movement of craving that ordinarily follows it without pause. That gap is not a metaphor. It exists in the architecture of the chain itself. Vedana arises. Tanha arises next. Between them, before Tanha has formed, while Vedana is still simply the quality of this contact in this moment, there is the possibility of meeting what has arisen without the mind already moving away from it or toward it. Vedana without Tanha, the feeling tone met, known, allowed to be exactly what it is, without the immediate movement of craving. When this meeting happens, the chain does not receive the conditions it needs to generate the next link with its usual force. Tanha arises without its full momentum. Upadana does not consolidate as it otherwise would. The loop thins. Each time the gap is met, the chain receives a little less. This is not a description of some advanced contemplative state. It is available right here, in this ordinary night, in this ordinary body. Think of the unease that arrived earlier, the tightening in the chest, the mental lean towards something unresolved. That quality, Vedana, is still recognizable in the body right now. A trace of it remains. To meet it means simply to know it for what it is, at the moment of its arising, before the mind has launched toward resolution. To know, unpleasant. To know, temporary. To know, arising through conditions. Present, seen. Not a verdict. A tone, known. In that meeting, The chain does not receive what it needs for the next step. The reaching does not begin with its usual force. The loop does not form. What is being described is meeting, not suppression. The feeling tone is not being refused or pushed away. It is being turned toward, allowed to be exactly what it is, seen without being managed. In practice, this has a distinct quality. The feeling tone arrives, and instead of the mind moving immediately to resolve or escape it, there is a brief act of honest recognition. This is unpleasant. I feel it. It is here. It is temporary. Something in the chain, expecting its usual next step, meets instead a quality of patient and clear attention. And in the face of that attention, the craving that would normally arise finds less purchase than it usually finds. Its urgency softens. What was pressing a moment ago is simply present now, seen clearly, no longer a demand that the loop must answer before rest is possible. The teachers in the Niddhana Sutta pointed to this quality of seeing as the beginning of freedom from the chain. The understanding that matters here is the living kind, direct seeing of conditions as they are arising, honest recognition in the moment of meeting, the awareness that arrives at the chain while it is still forming. That seeing changes what happens next. The chain that appeared as the inevitable nature of tonight reveals itself as a sequence of conditioned events, each dependent on the one before, each therefore carrying within it the possibility of being met differently. It does not add force, it adds light, and in the light, the loop that seemed fixed and permanent takes on the quality of exactly what it is, a temporary arising in a mind that remains capable of clarity. Practitioners who work with this teaching over time describe something consistent and recognizable. A thought arrives, the feeling tone rises, and in the breath before the reaching begins, in the thin space that opens between contact and craving, there is a quality of presence that meets what has arrived without being immediately moved by it. The chain slows at the joint. The loop does not gather its usual forward energy. This is not reported as a great achievement or a feat of concentration. This quality of clear seeing can be developed, and through practice, it begins to arrive earlier in the sequence, meeting the feeling tone closer and closer to the moment of first contact. It is a small, honest moment of clear seeing, and that moment, recurring through the night, changes the quality of the night completely. Contact will continue to occur. Feeling tone will continue to arrive. This is the nature of a mind that is alive and awake and meeting a world full of the day's unfinished things. The teaching is not asking for the chain to disappear. The chain is the texture of conscious experience, running beneath every moment of an aware life. What changes is the relationship to Vedana. The feeling tone can be met, briefly, honestly, without the mind adding its reaching to it. And in that meeting, the loop does not consolidate as it otherwise would. The night remains, but the fuel is no longer being added. And a fire that is not fed does what fires do when they are not fed. The gap is small, brief as a breath, and the Buddha's first and most foundational instruction for working within this chain was not a doctrine to hold in the mind, but a practice to take up in the body. The breath itself, The literal, always available practice that trains awareness to find the gap as it is forming, to remain within it, to meet Vedana at the moment it arises before tanha has gathered its speed. The practitioner who learns to settle into the breath is learning, in that same movement, to rest in the gap, to hold the space between contact and craving open for just one breath, longer than it ordinarily stays open. 2,500 years of practitioners found their passage through the restless night through exactly this. The breath already happening, the body already breathing, the simplest and most available practice, requiring nothing new to be added to this moment. And that breath, already present in this room as you listen, moving through the body without effort or instruction, faithful and unhurried, is exactly where we turn now. The breath is already here, moving through this body as it has moved since the first moment of life, with no instruction, no effort, no direction from the deliberate mind. It arrived before any technique was requested, and it will continue long after the evening's work is finished. Before any practice begins, before any method is introduced, the object of the teaching is already present in this room. In the belly, at the nostrils, in the slow rise and fall of the chest. Happening right now, without your management. Feel it, not as a concept, not as an instruction to breathe, as the actual sensation of this breath in this body, the faint coolness at the upper lip on the inhale, the small warmth of the exhale, the belly pressing gently upward as the breath completes, the brief pause at the turn, another breath arriving, unhurried, faithful. The body doing what it has always done, and awareness for just this moment, resting on what is already here. The Ānāpānasati Sutta, the discourse on mindfulness of breathing, set down in the Majjhima Nikaya, opens with practitioners leaving behind the demands of the ordinary world and turning their full attention to a single object. 16 steps, arranged in 4 tetrads, lay out with extraordinary precision the path that deepening breath attention follows. But the word that governs the very first step is not a word of effort or technique. It is pajanati, knowing clearly. Breathing in long, the practitioner clearly knows that they breathe in long. Breathing in short, they clearly know it's short. The first movement is recognition, nothing more. Honest attention to what is actually happening in the body, rather than to what the mind hopes to make happen. The practice begins with a turning of honest attention toward what is already present. Not a demand on the breath, not a project for improvement, a meeting with what is already taking place. This distinction carries the entire practice. The mind that has been awake in the dark for the past hour has been attempting to control, pressing down on the thoughts, demanding sleep, trying to arrange the conditions of the night into something acceptable. The Ānāpānasati practice asks for the opposite movement. Know what is already present, without adjusting it. Long or short, deep or shallow, easy or effortful. Whatever the breath is doing right now, in this body, in this moment, without correction. That is the object. Awareness arrives at the breath the way a hand rests on water, without disturbing what it touches, only knowing it. The breath enters the Paticca-samuppada chain, the chain of contact, feeling tone, craving, and grasping mapped in the previous teaching, at the precise joint where leverage is most available. Between Vedana and Tanha, the feeling tone of a moment and the movement of craving that ordinarily follows without pause. When awareness settles genuinely into the breath sensation, it occupies the same unit of attention that craving requires. The two cannot fully coexist in the same instant. Where the breath is felt, the reaching finds no foothold. The gap opens through the simplest mechanism available, attention already resting on something real prior to any act of will. Ajahn Brahm, drawing directly from the Ānāpānasati in his teaching on meditation, describes the experience of finding the breath in the body as coming home. The mind that has been projecting outward through the dark, circling, rehearsing, reaching toward problems it cannot solve at this hour, returns to the simplest available object. A sensation, present, real, requiring nothing from tomorrow, demanding no resolution, no intelligence, no performance. The breath does not need the mind's help in order to breathe. The mind can rest on the breath the way a traveler rests at the end of a long day, not building anything, not solving anything, simply allowing the effort to cease. In the third tetrad of the Ānāpānasati Sutta, the 4 steps concerned with the mind itself, the Buddha names 2 qualities that begin to arise naturally as breath attention deepens. Piti and sukha, often rendered as joy and happiness, but the words point to something more embodied and more precise than either translation suggests. Piti is the quality of aliveness and interest that arises in the body when the mind is genuinely present with its object. A brightening, a warmth moving through the chest and limbs, the body becoming more vividly real to itself rather than receding into the background of anxiety and restlessness. It is not an emotion the practitioner has to produce. It is a condition the body naturally moves into when the mind is no longer in active resistance to the present moment. Sukha is what follows. Ease. The simple, physical experience of ease in the body when the mind has ceased to press against what is present. The muscles that were holding the day's effort begin to soften. The jaw, the hands, the places in the chest where tension had settled as if it belonged there. All of these carry ease as their natural condition, and that condition returns when the pressure of the mind's reaching is withdrawn. Neither quality is manufactured. The third tetrad does not instruct the practitioner to generate piti or achieve sukha through any act of will. It instructs awareness to notice where these qualities appear as the practice deepens. They arise on their own, as the natural condition of a mind that has found its object and is no longer fighting the moment. They are the body's own response to being returned to, attended, met with patient and non-interfering awareness. This teaching carries practical significance for the restless night. The body's ease was never something to be earned or manufactured. It was available all along, covered over by the mind's activity, by the agitation the mind added to a body that had no natural inclination toward tension. The body, left to its own intelligence, knows how to release. The mind's continuous reaching was the only interference. When the mind finds an object, the breath, present, asking for nothing, the ease becomes available again, returning the way warmth returns to a room when a draft is finally closed out. A return to what was always the underlying condition, not achievement, recognition. Ajahn Chah, in his teaching on breath practice, offered a clarification that many practitioners found quietly transformative. Do not control the breath, he said. The breath does not need your direction. It has been breathing without you since you arrived in this life, and it will continue whether the deliberate mind participates or not. What the practice requires is simpler and more difficult than control. Let the breath breathe itself and know it. Follow it without grasping. Know each breath as it is, without wanting it to be different, without adjusting its length, without encouraging or restraining it. The breath is the mind's teacher in one specific thing, how to be present with something exactly as it is, without the movement of craving that ordinarily follows every contact. This is also why counting the breath, in for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4, can sometimes increase rather than reduce the mind's activity. Counting is a task. Holding is an act of will. Trying to produce a prescribed rhythm introduces a monitoring quality to the mind's relationship with the breath. The mind becomes a supervisor rather than a guest. The Ānāpānasati instruction asks for something far simpler, this breath, exactly as it arrives. Long, and knowing it long. Short, and knowing it short. Whatever is happening, known clearly, met without adjustment. Where in the body does the breath reveal itself most clearly right now? The Ānāpānasati Sutta points to the entrance of the breath, the place where the breath can be most immediately and precisely felt. For most practitioners lying down, this will be either the nostrils, where the air moves with a thin, cool precision at the edge of the upper lip, or the belly, where the breath moves the body in an unmistakable rhythm, the abdomen rising on the inhale, softening on the exhale. Both work. The question is only which provides the clearest access for this body in this moment. Try the nostrils, at the edge of the upper lip, where the air passes. The sensation is faint. Attending to something faint requires a settling of the mind. That settling is already beginning simply by turning toward this point. The mind that was circling has moved through redirection alone, and in arriving at a genuine physical sensation, it has something real to rest on, rather than the thought streams that offered only motion, without arrival. One breath felt clearly at the nostrils is different in quality from a minute of abstract breathing. Contact is made. The mind has landed somewhere. If the nostrils remain unclear, move the attention lower, to the belly, just below the navel. With the next inhale, feel this area rise. the body expanding from within, life pressing gently outward. With the exhale, feel it soften and release, the body returning to stillness, the quiet at the bottom of the out-breath that is one of the most unhurried moments available to a waking life. That pause at the end of the exhale, the natural rest between one breath finishing and the next beginning, is worth particular attention. The breath has completed itself. The body is in a brief moment of wholeness. Nothing is being sought. Nothing is happening. Only the body, in the dark, and the quiet, and the return of the next breath arriving without any effort or instruction from you. This small, ordinary pause contains the experience the teaching describes with far larger words: cessation, the natural stopping that belongs to every single breath, repeated with every complete cycle of breathing, available in this body right now, without any special preparation. The practitioner who finds this pause once has found something that does not go anywhere. It is built into the architecture of every breath, waiting to be noticed. The mind that finds this pause, even once, for the duration of one complete breath cycle, has encountered directly what the teaching is pointing toward. The loop has a gap in it. The chain does not run uninterrupted. Between the end of one breath and the beginning of the next, there is a natural stillness that belongs to the breath itself, not manufactured, not practiced into existence, simply available. When awareness finds this stillness, even briefly, the quality of the night begins to thin. The change is quiet. It does not announce itself. It arrives the way a room changes when a window is opened a little. A quiet shift in the quality of the air, nothing more. The mind will wander. This is the nature of a mind that has been occupied all day with real concerns and does not immediately know how to set them down. The Ānāpānasati Sutta does not describe a practitioner who settles into the breath and remains there without interruption. It describes a practitioner who trains in returning. Each return is the exercise. Each moment of recognizing that the mind has drifted and bringing it back is not a failure, but a completion. One clean return. Done. The next breath. The return must not carry judgment. The mind that comes back to the breath noting it has wandered again, with weariness, with the familiar weight of having fallen short of something, is adding a new unpleasant vedana to the next moment of contact. The chain receives new fuel. Ajahn Brahm's instruction here is precise. Return with the same quality of warmth you would offer a child who has looked away from something you were showing them. No irritation, no accounting of how many times. Only the quiet return to sensation, as if for the first time, with the same gentle interest that was present at the beginning. When the return comes with this quality of patience, the mind meets the chain at the vedana point. The unpleasant tone of self-criticism, which would ordinarily activate the next cycle of reaching and holding, does not arise because it is not added. The gap stays open. The breath is here, one clean moment of awareness, resting on a real sensation, without the weight of assessment. Practitioners who work with the Ānāpānasati over time describe the arising of piti with a quality of surprise. It comes without announcement and without any sense that something was being accomplished. A warmth in the chest, the body becoming pleasant to inhabit. A quality of aliveness noticeable precisely because it contrasts with the flat exhaustion of the agitated mind. The teachers point to this as confirmation that the practice is working. The simplest condition for piti is present, a mind that has found a genuine object and is meeting it with interest. That condition is here, in this room, right now. Nothing further is required. Sukha follows as warmth follows light. The body's ease, settling through the exhale. Held tensions finding the quiet that belongs to them when the mind's emergency report has softened. The shoulders release a little. The jaw opens slightly. The breath, which required effort and deliberateness at the beginning of this practice, becomes something that seems to breathe itself. Awareness, noticing rather than directing. The breath arriving and departing without management. The body doing what it has always known how to do when the mind allows it. In the first tetrad of the Ānāpānasati Sutta, the fourth step asks the practitioner to breathe while experiencing the whole body. The breath known throughout the full physical form, from the point of first entry outward. Chest expanding, diaphragm descending, belly opening, limbs at rest. The body as a single breathing presence rather than a collection of separate sensations. Awareness that has settled enough to find the breath at its entry point can, with patient attention, expand outward to hold this movement as a whole. The body breathing as a forest breathes when wind passes through it, every part responsive to the single motion moving through. Many practitioners find this expansion, from the narrow point of entry to the whole body breathing, accompanied by a notable settling. The field is no longer a mind circling over unresolved things. It is a body, breathing, present in the dark. The concerns have not disappeared, but they have found their correct proportion. They are thoughts arising in a body that is breathing and at rest. They are not the whole field. The body is the whole field. And the body, for this moment, is at ease. The whole body breathing in the dark is the most available home the restless mind has been searching for all evening. The body's wisdom precedes the mind's agitation and will outlast it. It does not need the mind's participation to breathe, to warm, to maintain its own quiet systems through the night. What changes when awareness arrives here is simply that the mind discovers what the body has been doing all along, and in discovering it, begins to belong to it again. The breath already breathes. The body already knows the way. The returning is all that is required. And in this room, right now, it has already begun. And in that returning, awareness settling into the whole body, breathing in the dark, something further opens. The body itself, attended to fully, becomes a field larger and quieter than any thought stream. A field in which awareness can move freely through the whole landscape of physical sensation, the breath and the weight of the limbs against the surface beneath them, the warmth of the skin, the small movements of aliveness that continue through the night without any instruction from the deliberate mind. This full body field of attention is where the practice turns next. The breath has opened the door, and the whole body stands waiting just beyond it. The body has been waiting. Through the hours of the day's activity, through the evening's accumulated weight, through the first restless turning in the dark, the body has been carrying all of it in its tissues, in the set of its muscles, in the warmth that never left it. The breath was the door, a single, precise point of contact with the body's present reality. Now the door is open, and what stands beyond it is the body itself, a living landscape that awareness can move through and, in moving, come to rest within. No longer the problem the restless mind has been trying to solve, but the country it is finally invited to inhabit. The Ānāpānasati Sutta, the discourse on mindfulness of the body, set down in the Majjhima Nikaya as the 119th teaching, opens with the same setting as many of the Buddha's foundational meditation discourses. Practitioners have gone apart, settled into stillness, and turned their full attention toward a single domain of experience, the body. But the instruction the Buddha offers is more encompassing than any single technique. Ānāpānasati, mindfulness that has entered into the body and taken up residence there. Not mindfulness applied to the body from a clinical distance, as if awareness were examining something outside itself. Mindfulness that is immersed, that has moved into the body's territory and knows it from within, that experiences the warmth and weight and aliveness of this physical form as the primary and immediate field of awareness, rather than as background to the mind's more pressing concerns. The Buddha said of this practice that mindfulness of the body, when developed and cultivated, is of great fruit and of great benefit. He said it was a foundation for whatever deepening the practitioner wished to undertake, a portal through the hindrances, a ground from which the mind could expand into the full range of what is present. For the practitioner lying in the dark, in an ordinary room, in an ordinary body that will not settle, in the middle of an ordinary restless night, the significance of the Ānāpānasati teaching is more immediate than any long-term fruit. It is the recognition that the body is already here, already a field of experience vast enough to receive a restless mind and give it somewhere real to rest. Consider the mind's relationship to the body during the insomnia loop. The body has been registering the tension of the day's concerns, holding it in the shoulders, in the jaw, in the places along the spine where strain settles without announcement. From the mind's perspective, inside the loop, the body is background, the uncomfortable surface on which the real drama of the thought stream plays out. It is something to be managed, adjusted, repositioned, made less uncomfortable, persuaded toward the sleep that the mind is simultaneously preventing. The body becomes a problem the restless mind is trying to solve from the outside, as if awareness stood apart from it and issued instructions. The Ānāpānasati teaching inverts this relationship entirely. The body is not the background of the experience. It is the foreground. The body has something the mind cannot locate in the thought stream, presence, pure and immediate. The body is never anywhere except here and now. It cannot rehearse yesterday's conversation or live tomorrow's difficulty in advance. It exists only in the present tense, in its weight, in its warmth, in the texture of its immediate aliveness. When awareness enters the body and moves through it genuinely, it arrives, for the first time in hours, in a field that exists entirely in the present moment. The thought stream runs in time. The body does not. And that difference is everything. The Ānāpānasati Sutta explicitly includes the lying down posture. This matters for the person in the dark because the meditation traditions sometimes carry an implicit assumption that genuine practice requires an upright position. The cushion, the erect spine, the deliberate formal arrangement of the body into a sitting posture. The Ānāpānasati recognizes all four postures without hierarchy: walking, standing, sitting, lying down. In each posture, the practitioner simply knows the body as it is. I am lying down. This is how the body is arranged right now. This is valid. This is the practice. The person in the dark, horizontal, blanketed, limbs at rest, is in exactly the right posture for what comes next. There is nothing to change. There is only the body to arrive in. The practitioner in this posture carries no disadvantage. The large muscles have already released their postural work. Gravity is no longer being opposed. The conditions for physical ease are better here than in any other arrangement the body can take. Begin with the surface. The body is resting against a surface right now, and that contact is immediate and undeniable. The weight of the body, the head, the shoulders, the hips, the heels, is pressing down against the mattress with the patient. Reliable pressure of mass meeting support. In the Buddha's teaching on the elements, this quality, solidity, resistance, the quality of form and density that holds its shape, is the earth element, one of the four fundamental qualities of all physical existence, present in this body right now, available in this single sensation. The weight of the body against the surface that holds it. The earth element, here, undeniable. Let the awareness settle into this weight. The back of the skull, if lying on the back, the slight pressure there, the bone's density perfectly real and perfectly present against the pillow. The broad contact the shoulder blades make with the surface beneath them, the spreading quality of the back when it releases into support rather than holding itself up against some anticipated demand. The hips, perhaps the heaviest point of contact for most bodies lying down, the place where the earth element is most unmistakably felt. Sheer, simple, uncomplicated weight. And the heels, often overlooked, the last point of a body lying flat, making their own quiet contact with the surface. Each of these is a door. Awareness arriving at any of them finds a sensation that is simply present, requiring no interpretation, no management, no response. Weight, contact, the body resting in the earth's support as bodies have always rested, through every night of every human life that has been lived on this ground. There is something in the recognition of the body's weight that is itself releasing. The mind that has been holding tension, mentally maintaining things, mentally keeping track, mentally rehearsing the arrangements that need to be made, encounters in the body's weight an object that is not doing any of this. The body is surrendering to gravity with the complete and uncomplicated willingness of mass that knows where it belongs. It has been surrendering since the moment it lay down. Every part of the body is pressing toward the earth with a faithfulness that the mind has not been capable of tonight. Awareness arriving in this weight finds something the thought stream could not provide, an object that is already released, already given, already at rest in the support that receives it. The body has been doing this unremarked through all the hours of the night, yielding without waiting for the mind's permission, showing by example what rest looks like when conditions allow it. Now the warmth, the fire element, the quality of heat that the body generates continuously as the living expression of its cellular work. The body is warm right now, under the blanket, in the dark. This warmth is present along the skin and at the hands and at the core of the chest, where the body's heat is most concentrated. This warmth is not a metaphor for comfort. It is the actual temperature of a living body, maintained through the night by processes that have nothing to do with what the mind has been rehearsing. The body is warm because it is alive. This warmth is evidence, immediate, sensory, unambiguous, that something more fundamental than the thought stream is operating in this room. The warmth has a quality of containment. Under the weight of the blanket, enclosed in the space of this body in this bed, the warmth holds the body in a kind of presence, the body announcing itself to awareness, insisting on its own reality in a way that no thought can match. Awareness, resting in the body's warmth, is resting in something that was here before the evening's concerns arrived and will continue after they have passed. The warmth is simply the body going about its business. And the body's business through the night is, without drama or announcement, rest. The wind element, the breath, still moving. Still arriving at the nostrils or the belly, still completing its cycle, still pausing at the end of the exhale before the next inhale, begins without any instruction from the deliberate mind. In the context of the body as a whole field, the breath is now one quality among several, the element of movement weaving through the more stable elements of weight and warmth. The breath knits the body together. Its motion through the chest connects the upper body to the lower. Its rhythm gives the body a pulse that organizes all the other sensations around a single repeating motion. The whole body participates in breathing, the lungs, the shoulders, the belly, the slight shift of the hips with each full inhale and the soft settling that follows the exhale. Awareness that has expanded into the whole body includes the breath as the central thread running through it all. Now awareness can move. The Kayagata Sati practice does not require a prescribed sequence, though a systematic movement from head to feet is one available approach. It can also move freely, finding whatever sensation is most alive in the body at this moment, resting with it, then allowing attention to shift to another area, in no order except the body's own invitation. The hands. What is the quality of sensation in the hands right now? The warmth of them, the fingers, resting or lightly touching, the skin, faintly aware of the fabric against it or of the air moving past it. The hands have been in motion through a long day. They are still now, and the stillness they have arrived at has a texture of its own, the quiet of limbs that have finished their work. The face, the forehead, is there a tightness held there? A slight furrow that has been in place for hours without the mind's notice? Awareness arriving at the forehead asks nothing of it. It only sees the skin of the forehead, the region between the eyebrows, the muscles that pull inward when the mind is actively working. Awareness simply knows this area, holds it in attention, lets it be exactly as it is. And in being held in attention, the forehead is often found to soften, not commanded, seen. There is a difference, and the body knows it. The jaw, one of the great storage places of unexpressed tension. The jaw that set itself during a difficult moment in the afternoon and never quite received the message that the moment had ended. The molars that have been in faint contact since long before sleep was attempted. Awareness arriving at the jaw is not issuing instructions or attempting to force relaxation. It is simply present, meeting this area with the same patient and non-interfering attention that the Ānāpānasati practice brought to the breath. And the jaw, under that attention, finds its own way to the releasing it could not find under the mind's oversight. This is the consistent report of practitioners who work with the Kaya-gatasati over time. The body releases under attention rather than under instruction. The areas of held tension that the occupied mind never noticed through the day become visible when awareness finally arrives and stays. And visibility is itself sufficient. The tension does not need to be dismantled or overcome. It loosens in the simple light of recognition, the way ice at the edge of a warm room softens without anyone deciding to melt it. The awareness that sees the tension is already warmer than the tension. The seeing is enough. The body responds to awareness as it does not respond to effort. Effort produces resistance. Awareness produces recognition. And recognition is what the held places have been waiting for. The thought stream continues. The Kaya-gatasati practice does not silence the mind. Thoughts arise in practitioners who are deeply absorbed in body awareness, just as they arise in the early minutes of the practice. What changes is proportion. A thought about tomorrow's difficulty arises in a mind that is presently aware of the warmth of the hands and the weight of the hips and the breath moving through the chest and the quiet aliveness of the face. The thought has not shrunk. The field has expanded. And in an expanded field, the thought takes its actual proportion, one arising in a vast and available present, real but not the whole of what is here. The Kaya-gatasati Sutta describes the fruit of this practice as a kind of unboundedness. The mind that has entered the body fully is no longer contracted around a single object. The contraction that the insomnia loop requires, the narrowing of attention onto one thought, the holding that generates grasping, the loop that feeds its own momentum, cannot maintain itself in a field this wide. There is too much present. The body is too warm, too weighted, too alive, too immediate. The loop looks for its usual conditions and finds the body instead. And the body, by its simple and unhurried presence, gives the loop nothing to hold on to. The body has been practicing this all along. Through every hour of the restless night, through every pass of the thought stream over its accumulated concerns, the body has been doing the one thing the mind could not manage, resting in the present. It has no access to yesterday's difficulty or tomorrow's uncertainty. It knows only the temperature of this moment, the weight of these limbs, the texture of this breath. It has been here, in this simple, unhurried, immediate present, the entire time the mind was somewhere else. And now that awareness has arrived to meet it, the body offers what it has always been quietly prepared to offer, the ground. The practice now is simply to stay, to remain in the field, to let awareness continue its unhurried movement through the warmth and weight and aliveness of this body in this dark. The breath as the unbroken thread, the weight as the sure anchor, the warmth as the presence, the face, the hands, the chest, the quiet places where the body has been holding what the day left in it. All of it present, all of it available, all of it in this moment, simply the body being what it has always been, a living world complete in itself, capable of rest, already moving in the direction of rest from the moment awareness arrived to accompany it. And within this body, within the warmth and weight and breath, within this field that the Kayagata Sati has revealed to be both vast and immediate, something further begins to become available. The body's relationship to the night, the way the dark and the quiet cooperate with the body's own deep pull towards sleep. The body knows this pull. It has been following it all along, beneath the mind's activity, patient and persistent. And as awareness settles more fully into this field, the gap between the body's direction and the mind's direction narrows. The mind is arriving where the body already was. And the teachers who have mapped what lies next describe a quality of natural deepening, a movement the body and the mind make together when the mind has finally agreed to travel at the body's unhurried pace. The body is quieter now. Through all the hours of this restless night, the mind has been the whole of experience, circling, rehearsing, filling the dark with its activity and its urgency. But something has shifted in the quality of what is present. The weight of the body is known. The breath is present. The warmth of this living form is available. And from within this larger, quieter field, from the body's grounded presence rather than from inside the thought stream, the mind itself has begun to become visible. Not as the whole of experience, which it seemed to be an hour ago, as something moving through experience, something that can be watched, something that has been changing, is changing right now and will continue to change whether the practitioner does anything about it or not. This watching is the territory of the third foundation of mindfulness, the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta, the discourse on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, among the most studied and applied teachings in the entire Pali Canon, describes 4 domains in which mindfulness can establish itself and deepen. The body, sensations, postures, the breath and its qualities, feeling tone, the Vedana quality that each moment of contact carries as its immediate companion, mind states, the quality or character of the mind itself at this moment, and the objects and principles that arise in mind, the nature of what the mind is meeting. The first 2 foundations have been the ground of this evening's practice. The body, with its weight and warmth and breath, and the feeling tone that accompanied each moment of contact along the chain. The third foundation is the mind itself, chitta, the state and quality of the mind as a moment-by-moment object of awareness rather than the medium through which everything else is known. This shift from the mind as the lens of all experience to the mind as something that can itself be seen within experience is precisely what the body's ground makes possible. The mind has been the whole picture all evening. Now it becomes part of the picture. And that change in proportion changes everything about how the night can be met. The practitioner who has found stability in the body now has something the mind alone could not provide, a ground outside the thought stream from which the thought stream can be observed. Before the body practice, there was nowhere to stand that was not already inside the loop. The loop filled the field. It was the texture of the night. It was how tonight simply was. After the body practice, the field is wider than the loop. The body is present around the thoughts, beneath the thoughts, independent of what the thoughts are doing. And from this wider field, from the riverbank rather than the middle of the river, the mind's activity becomes something that can be seen. This change in position is the entire foundation of the watching that the third foundation describes. The Satipaṭṭhāna instruction on citta is precise and unpretentious. The practitioner knows the mind with anger as mind with anger, knows the mind without anger as mind without anger, knows the contracted mind as contracted, the scattered mind as scattered, the agitated mind as agitated, the concentrated mind as concentrated. The instruction asks for nothing beyond accurate recognition of what is actually present. No attempt to change the quality, no assessment of whether the quality is an acceptable one, no comparing of this mind against some standard of what a peaceful or rested mind ought to feel like. Simply the honest knowing, this is what is here. This quality, in this mind, in this moment, seen clearly and held in awareness with the same patience that the breath and the body have already received. What is the quality of this mind right now? Hold the question a moment before answering from habit. Is it still scattered? Thoughts arriving quickly, each one carrying its own partial urgency. Attention pulled forward before any single thought has resolved. Or has something slowed? Is the quality more tired than agitated? A particular flatness that the earlier hours of circling have produced. The quality of having run a long way with nowhere to arrive. Is there a quality of resistance still present? The mind that does not want to be here, that keeps leaning towards some arrangement in which the night is over and morning has arrived and the accumulated concerns have found their resolution? Or is there, beneath any of these, something that might be the first faint sign of thinning, an early quietness at the edge of the field, the loop still present but running with slightly less momentum than it had before? Whatever the quality is, know it. Name it honestly. Scattered, tired, resistant, circling, quieter than before. The naming is the practice. And the practice is already underway the moment awareness arrives at the mind with honest recognition rather than with the goal of changing what it finds. The naming matters in a way that is easy to underestimate. In the Mahasi Sayadaw noting tradition, the insight practice developed by the 20th century Burmese teacher whose methods have been practiced widely across the world. The practitioner applies a simple, consistent label to whatever arises in experience. A sensation in the body, noted. A feeling tone, noted. A thought, noted as thinking. A plan, noted as planning. A worry, noted as worrying. A memory, noted as remembering. The note is not a description of the thought's content. It is a label for the kind of mental activity that is happening. The mind is doing this, and this is what this kind of doing is called. The label is directed not at what the mind is thinking about, but at the fact and quality of the thinking itself. What the noting does to the thought is subtle and significant. Before the noting, a thought arrives, and awareness is immediately inside it, following its logic, responding to its concerns, treating its content as the situation that requires a response. The mind has been consumed by the thought, and the thought has become the whole of the moment. After the noting, the same thought is still present, but awareness has adopted a different relationship to it. The practitioner is not inside the thought. The practitioner is the one who noted it. There is a gap, small but real, between the one who thinks and the one who knows that thinking is happening. That gap is the same gap that the breath practice and the body practice have been opening from a different direction. The body established the ground. The noting finds the gap in the mind itself. Try it now, with whatever thought is present. Find the thought, the one that has been arriving most frequently through this night, or the most recent arrival, or the one that has the most charge at this particular moment. Look at it. Do not follow it. Simply see what kind of activity it is. Is it planning? The mind rehearsing steps, arranging sequences, working out how tomorrow's concern might be navigated? Is it worrying? The mind returning to a situation whose outcome is uncertain, testing it from different angles without arriving at resolution. Is it rehearsing? Replaying a conversation, examining what was said, running alternative versions of how it might have gone. Name it simply. Planning, worrying, rehearsing, and then return the attention to the body, to the breath, to the weight and warmth that are present beneath and around this thought. The thought has been seen. It was noted. It does not require a response. It was traffic, and you did not climb into it. And now, where did the thought go? The thought that was present a moment ago, before the noting. It has passed. This is the discovery that the watching makes visible. The thought was impermanent. It arrived. It was seen. And in being seen without being grasped, it passed more readily than thoughts that were caught and held and pulled into the loop. Another thought has arrived in its place, also impermanent, also passing, also available for noting. The sequence is continuous, arising, passing, arising, passing. The impermanence was always there. The watching makes it available to direct experience rather than to intellectual acknowledgement. The teaching of anicca, impermanence, the first of the three characteristics of conditioned existence in the Pali teaching, is not primarily a philosophical proposition. The Buddha presented it as something to be observed directly, in the immediate texture of experience, as the mind watches what is actually happening to each arising phenomenon. Sabbisankhara anicca, all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. This includes the thoughts that have been circling in this room all evening. It includes the concern that carried the most weight at midnight. It includes the loop itself, which arose through conditions, and which conditions, moment by moment, either sustain or fail to sustain. Watching the mind reveals impermanence as a lived quality of experience rather than a teaching to be stored and retrieved. Each thought that passes is direct evidence. Each noting is a small confirmation. The mind is not fixed. It is moving. It is changing. It has been changing all along. What happens to a thought that is noted and met with honest, non-responding awareness is different from what happens to a thought that is grasped. The grasped thought is held, turned over, examined for the resolution it can never quite produce at this hour. The held thought sustains the chain. It keeps Vedana active, keeps tanha reaching, keeps upadana consolidating. The noted thought receives something different. It receives recognition, honest, unhurried, without the grasping that would sustain it. And a thought that receives recognition rather than grasping is a thought that arrives at the gap in the chain and finds the chain does not form with its usual momentum. It arises. It is seen. It passes. The next thought arises, also seen, also passing. The loop, which required each thought to be held and built upon, begins to find less traction with each noting. This thinning is not something the practitioner causes. It is something the practitioner watches. This is the precise and important distinction carried in the section's title. Watch the restless mind change. The instruction is not to change the mind. The instruction is to watch it change. The watching does not accelerate the changing. The watching makes the changing visible. And visible change is experienced differently from change that is happening without your knowing it. Attempting to change the mind by force, to stop the thoughts, to command silence, to overpower the loop by pressing against it, has been the action of the early hours of this night, and it did not produce what the mind was hoping to find. It fed the loop with new fuel, the unpleasant vedana of effort and resistance, the feeling tone of failing at something, the new craving for a silence that kept receding. Watching is something entirely different, the willingness to observe without adding, to see without needing to change what is seen, to know the mind as it is, honestly and without judgment, and to discover that this knowing, this clear and patient seeing, is itself the condition that the loop cannot continue to require. Ajahn Chah described the watching mind with an image that practitioners have carried for generations. He invited his students to imagine sitting by the side of a road, watching traffic pass. Cars come, trucks come, motorbikes, carts, slow vehicles and fast ones. The traffic is continuous and varied and does not require the watcher's management. The watcher is not directing the traffic, not stopping it, not riding in any of the vehicles. The watcher is sitting at the roadside, footing firm, watching it pass. The thoughts in the restless mind are the traffic. The awareness that watches is the one sitting at the roadside. The traffic does not stop because the watcher stops riding in it, but the watcher is no longer being carried wherever the traffic goes. There is a position available, a footing, a ground, a stable place from which the moving can be watched without the watcher being moved. This position already exists. That awareness is here, attending to this teaching rather than being carried away by the loop is evidence enough. The footing is here. The ground is the body. The watcher is already at the roadside. This evening's practice has been building toward that footing. The body is the footing. The breath is the ground beneath the footing. The warmth and weight of this physical form, its immediate and unhurried presence in this bed, in this dark, is the surface on which the watching stands. From here, the concerns that arrived at 10 o'clock and at midnight and in the small hours of the night are visible as what they always were. Traffic. Each of them passed. Each new arrival will pass in turn. The loop is not a fixed condition of this mind or of this night. It is a flow, and flows change. Their speed changes. Their character changes. Their momentum changes as the conditions that sustained the early urgency gradually, reliably shift. The mind you have now is not the mind that lay down tonight. That is a fact the watching makes available. The quality of the restlessness has changed. Perhaps its urgency has softened. Perhaps its themes have shifted. Perhaps the thoughts that had the most charge an hour ago are arriving with slightly less force now. From inside the loop, these changes were invisible. The loop appeared fixed, the permanent character of tonight, the way things were, the truth of this mind on this night. From the watching position, from the body's ground, from the steady footing that the practice has built, the changes are visible. A process that has been running all evening and changing all evening is still running and still changing. It is visible now. And what is visible is that it is moving in a direction. The conditions that sustain the loop are thinning. The watching does not have to do anything more than continue to watch. The awareness that watches the mind change is itself unchanged by what it watches. Each arising was known. Each passing was known. The knowing itself did not arise and pass. The restless thoughts have been arising and passing throughout the entire length of this night. The awareness in which they arose, the clear, patient knowing that has been present throughout, sometimes obscured by the urgency of the thought's content, but never itself destroyed by it, has not been carried away by any of them. It was present before the first thought of the evening arrived, and it will be present after the last thought passes into sleep. It does not need the thoughts to stop in order to be what it is. It is already still. It is already watching from a stillness that the loop, even at its most agitated, was not able to reach. And in this stillness, in the clear, untroubled awareness that has been here throughout, that the body practice made visible and the watching practice has confirmed, something the night has been withholding begins to release. Not sleep, necessarily, not yet, and not through any demand. Something quieter and more foundational, the recognition that the restless mind was never the whole of what was present in this room. It was a movement in a field. The field was always wider. The stillness was always here. And the stillness that remains when the watching has found its ground is not an absence of the mind's activity. It is a presence, steady, open, receiving whatever arises without being altered by it, that has been the deepest quality of this mind all along, obscured but never absent, available the moment the watching turned toward it and rested there. There is a voice that has been present throughout this entire night. It arrived before the first hour of wakefulness completed itself, and it has not grown quiet since. It is not the breath or the body or the awareness that has been learning to settle in this room. It is the voice that runs beneath all of that, the one that narrates and assesses and keeps its steady account of how things are going. You have been awake for too long. You should have settled by now. You have tried the breath and tried the body and tried watching the thoughts change. And still here you are. The voice does not pause to ask whether its commentary is helping. It simply continues, because continuation is what it has always done, learned so gradually, across so many years, that it has long since ceased to feel like a voice at all. It feels like accuracy. It feels like the mind seeing clearly. This is where the practice turns now, toward that voice, and toward the possibility of meeting it differently. The commentary this voice delivers has a familiar shape. It reaches first for the hour, the time registered, catalogued, translated immediately into lost sleep and its compounding cost. Then to the causes, the coffee taken too late, the conversation that did not resolve, the task that announced itself just as the day was ending and has been waiting since for the attention the night has not permitted. Then to the consequences, tomorrow's demands laid out in sequence, the gap between rest needed and rest available. Each observation arrives with the weight of a verdict, as if naming clearly what is wrong were itself a useful act. With each verdict, the body responds, a tightening at the chest, a renewed alertness in the limbs, a sharpening of the very wakefulness the voice is lamenting. The voice intends to help. It genuinely believes that clear-eyed attention to the problem will assist in moving through it. What it cannot see is that for this problem, at this hour, relentless assessment is the precise thing preventing what it is seeking. Pressure does not open the door to rest. It holds it closed. Set that voice aside for a moment and bring to mind instead a person you love. A close friend, perhaps, or a family member. Someone whose well-being you care about with a directness that requires no argument or justification. Imagine that this person is lying awake tonight exactly as you are, their mind occupied and circling, their body unable to settle, their thoughts returning again and again to the same unresolved accumulation. They have tried to breathe. They have tried to relax. Sleep has not arrived, and the hour is growing later, and they are beginning to feel the familiar pressure of a night that is slipping through without delivering the rest the body genuinely needs. You are present to all of this, and you would not look away. You are with them in their difficulty, and they are real to you, and their distress matters to you without qualification. What do you say? What tone does your voice carry? What is the quality of care that arrives, naturally, without deliberation, in the moment when someone you love is struggling with the same night you are struggling with right now? You would not tell them they were failing at rest. You would not lay out the arithmetic of the lost hours or suggest that a more disciplined mind would have settled by now. You would not itemize the causes of their wakefulness or press on each one in the hope that pressure would accelerate a solution. None of those things would arrive naturally in your voice, because you know, with the immediate, non-deliberate knowledge that care makes available, that this is not what a person lying awake in the dark needs to hear. What arrives instead is warmth, the plain, unpretentious warmth of someone choosing to remain present with what is difficult, without requiring the difficulty to justify itself or resolve on a particular schedule. You might say, "This is hard, and it will pass." You might say, "You don't have to solve this tonight." You might say, "The morning will come regardless, and you will be there for it, and this night is survivable." Something in the voice that speaks to those we love knows what a sleepless night requires, and offers it without ceremony, without measuring whether they deserve it. Pema Chodron describes with precision what she calls the gap in self-compassion. The quality of care that arises naturally when we encounter suffering in someone we love, the instinct toward gentleness, the suspension of judgment, the simple wish for their ease, is precisely what most people withhold from themselves when encountering the same suffering in their own experience. The sleeplessness of the friend receives tenderness. The sleeplessness of the self receives assessment and instruction. The distress of the friend calls forth patience. The distress of the self calls forth a fresh round of self-criticism and renewed pressure to do better. Chodron names this asymmetry as a learned habit rather than an accurate reflection of anything the self deserves or has earned by its handling of the night. It was built across a long time, reinforced by the belief that interior pressure produces results and that warmth in its place would be indulgent, or would let the effort toward resolution soften when it cannot afford to soften. The practice of self-compassion is the patient, repeated interruption of that habit, discovering, one night at a time, that warmth offered inward produces rest that pressure has never once managed to deliver. The teaching the tradition offers for this turning is metta, the Pali term rendered in English as loving kindness, though neither translation fully conveys its precision. Metta is the deliberate, trained direction of attention toward the welfare of a being, beginning with the self and moving outward, in the classical instruction, through ever-widening circles until no being is excluded from the field of goodwill. The Karaniya-metta Sutta, the discourse on loving kindness, preserved in the Khuddaka Nikaya, opens with an image the tradition has returned to across centuries as the clearest available picture of what metta, at its fullest development, actually feels like from the inside. A mother and her only child, the quality of care she extends to that child, total, unconditional, awake to every indication of need, willing without hesitation to place her own safety between the child and whatever threatens it. The teaching does not ask for sentiment or performed warmth. It points toward a quality of wishing, well, that is this steady, this attentive, and this free of condition, and asks whether it can be turned, with genuine intention, inward. The tradition's instruction to begin metta practice with the self, rather than with another object, is grounded in a clear and practical understanding of how genuine goodwill works. A practitioner who attempts to offer loving kindness to others without first establishing any warmth toward their own experience finds the practice hollow. The words may be spoken, the direction of attention may be attempted, but the quality of care that makes metta more than verbal repetition, the felt sense of genuinely wishing well to the being under attention, cannot be extended outward from a place of active inner hostility. The self that has been monitored and pressed and held to account all night must be met with some measure of goodwill before it can become a source of goodwill for anything else. This is how the practice works, and it means that the one lying awake in this room right now, in this particular state of tiredness and residual agitation, is precisely the correct starting point. The practice requires no self that has arrived at peace or handled the night with elegance. It asks for this self, as it is, in this moment. The phrases associated with metta practice are ancient and plain. Repeated across centuries and many traditions, they have found their way through translation without losing their essential simplicity. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I be at ease. 4 wishes, directed inward, offered as genuinely as the mind can manage. They are not conditions placed on the self's worthiness of rest, and they are not commands issued to the night. They are a direction, the mind turning toward its own welfare with the same deliberate intention it would bring to the welfare of someone it genuinely cares about. Happy, the word reaches toward the quality of a mind that has ceased to press against what is present. Healthy, the body's natural ease. which was available before the mind's monitoring added its layer of held tension. Safe, the felt knowledge that this room contains no actual threat, that the alarm the body is running responds to thought content rather than to anything in the present environment. At ease, the quality that arrived in the pause between breaths, when the body settled, when a thought was watched and allowed to pass without pursuit. These phrases give that quality a name and a direction. Say them now, in the voice that means what it says. The same voice that found its warmth when the imagined friend was lying awake with the same difficulty. The voice that offered presence rather than assessment, patience rather than inventory, the simple willingness to remain with what is hard without requiring it to be otherwise. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I be at ease. Let each phrase rest in the mind long enough to be genuinely meant, not hurried through in the hope that speed will cover the distance to sleep more quickly. The mind that rushes through these phrases is still in a hurry, still operated by the pressure of the night, still attempting to use the practice as a more refined version of the same reaching that has been running since wakefulness began. The invitation here is different, to slow and to let each wish carry its full weight, to feel in the body what it is to genuinely wish oneself well, and to notice that this feeling, even faintly and briefly present, changes the quality of the moment that follows it. Thich Nhat Hanh, in his teaching on compassionate presence, offers a phrase that belongs naturally alongside the metta instruction for anyone who finds the traditional forms difficult to enter with sincerity. I know you are suffering. I am here. The phrase was offered to another person, to someone in pain, for whom the simple acknowledgement of their difficulty and the knowledge that they are not alone changes the character of that difficulty. The same words carry the same weight when turned inward, in the dark, to the part of the self that has been awake for hours and has been met throughout that time mostly with impatience. I know you are suffering. The suffering of a restless night is real, and it has its own weight, and it has gone until this moment largely unacknowledged. I am here. Awareness, choosing to remain. The watching that has been learning all night to rest on what is present, now resting on the one who has been doing the learning. Finding that person worthy of the same patient company it has been offering to the breath, the body, each thought as it moved through. What changes when the voice changes is not the room. The hour is the same. The tiredness is the same. The list of things the morning will bring is unchanged in every particular. What changes is the quality of the relationship between the awareness that is present here and the self it is attending to. A mind held in the posture of judgment, monitoring, assessing, pressing on the gap between what is and what should be, maintains a continuous low-level activation that draws on the same resources rest requires. Every verdict adds an unpleasant tone the Paticcasamuppada chain receives as fuel and converts into the next movement of craving and resistance. When the voice softens, even briefly, even only in the duration of a single phrase, this activation finds nothing to work with. The chain is not fed. The breath is here, The body is here. And awareness, for this present moment, is meeting what it finds with something other than urgency. This is rest of a kind sleep alone cannot provide, a rest of the mind's relationship to itself. And that relationship is available right now, regardless of what the hour says. Return to the phrases once more, without measuring them against an outcome, without the part of the mind that wants to evaluate whether the practice is producing results that justify the time it has taken from the night. The phrases are offered to the self because the self is here and awake and has been doing something genuinely difficult for longer than it expected to be doing it. That is sufficient reason. No further justification is required. The hand extends toward what is struggling because it is struggling. The same reflex that extended warmth toward the imagined friend without first calculating whether their degree of difficulty met some threshold of seriousness. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I be at ease. With whatever quality of sincerity is available in this moment, in this particular state of tiredness. The quality of the offering does not need to be certain in order to be real. Even a small wish, genuinely meant, is a different direction than the one the monitoring voice was moving in. And direction, in this practice, is everything. The quality that has been building across every section of this night, the patient attention that found the breath, the embodied awareness that settled into the whole body, the watching that learned to observe thought without being drawn into its current. All of it finds its clearest expression here, in the simple act of turning the practice's full attention toward the one who has been doing the practicing. Each section assembled a particular capacity, to be present with what is here without requiring it to be different, to meet difficulty without adding to it, to remain in this moment without pressing it to yield something else. That capacity, turned now toward the self, becomes what the night has been waiting to receive, a quality of inner accompaniment that does not depend on circumstances improving, or sleep arriving, or the hour reversing its direction. The night has not ended. The room is the same room it always was. And within it, quietly and without announcement, the field has shifted, the way a room shifts when a lamp is lit in it, the same darkness holding something it did not hold before. Something has shifted in the quality of this night. The hours have not resolved themselves, and the concerns that were present at the beginning have not found their answers. But the mind has been doing something, through each of these sections, that it almost never does in the dark, turning toward what is difficult rather than away from it. Turning toward the breath and finding it already present, faithful, requiring nothing from the deliberate mind. Turning toward the body and finding its quiet intelligence still working through the night, untroubled by everything the mind had been adding to the hour. Turning toward the restless thoughts and discovering they were impermanent, arising and passing through awareness without requiring the mind's help to arrive or to leave. Turning toward the suffering of the sleepless hour itself, and offering it something other than more pressure. What remains now, as the night continues in its unhurried way, is the oldest offering the tradition has for a moment exactly like this one, the 3 refuges. 3 objects to which the Buddhist tradition has returned for more than 2,000 years as places where the mind, in any condition of difficulty, can set down its load and rest. The formula the tradition uses for taking refuge is simple enough to hold without effort. Buddha Sarana Gacchami. Dhamma Sarana Gacchami. Sangham Sarana Gacchami. I go for refuge in the Buddha. I go for refuge in the Dhamma. I go for refuge in the Sangha. The key word in each line is sarana, translated as refuge, though its range in Pali points towards something more embodied and immediate than the English suggests. A shelter, a resting place, somewhere the mind can bring its weight and be received without having to justify the weight it carries. The word holds the quality of a traveller arriving somewhere safe after a long day. A place of genuine rest within difficulty rather than escape from it. The formula does not ask the mind to leave the night or transcend its condition or achieve some altered state that would make the wakefulness irrelevant. It asks the mind to find, within the night, 3 sources of support that have always been present and are available right now, in this room, at this hour, in this particular and ordinary difficulty. The first refuge is Buddha, the Buddha. In the Pali tradition, the Buddha is understood primarily as a human being, a man born into ordinary circumstances, who experienced the full range of human suffering, who recognized that the mind's restlessness was not an inevitable feature of being alive, and who devoted his life to finding the path through. He sat in the dark. He sat with a mind that had not yet stilled. He sat through the night of his awakening with precisely the kind of mental activity that has been running in this room. The reaching, the resistance, the restless movement between what is and what the mind would prefer. The commentarial tradition describes forces of distraction and doubt pressing at the edges of awareness, and the practitioner meeting, each with clarity rather than avoidance. He moved through it by understanding it, by seeing clearly the mechanism that kept restlessness in motion, and by ceasing, one moment at a time, to add fuel to that mechanism. The first refuge is this example, a human mind that found its way through and left the path mapped for every mind that would follow. Taking refuge in the Buddha does not require belief in anything supernatural. It requires only the recognition of what the example actually demonstrates, that a human mind, one that was not at the beginning of the path, essentially different from the mind awake in this room right now, was capable of moving from restlessness to stillness, from the grasping that keeps the paticca samuppada chain running to the clear awareness that allows it to slow. The refuge is in the demonstration itself, in the fact that this is possible, in the standing evidence that the mind is not trapped in its own agitation by any law it cannot work with. When the mind in the dark turns toward this and allows its weight to rest on it, something in the night changes tone. The wakefulness becomes less isolated. The struggle becomes less unprecedented. The small hours lose a little of the quality they carry when the mind is certain it is facing them entirely alone. Someone has been here before and found the way, and what they found is available. In the breath, in the body, in each of the practices that have occupied this night. The second refuge is Dhamma. The Dhamma. The word Dhamma points towards several interlocking meanings, all of which are present and relevant in a sleepless night. It is the teaching, the body of instruction the Buddha offered across his lifetime, preserved with extraordinary fidelity across centuries and available in the practices that have been used throughout this night. It is also the truth, the nature of reality as the teaching describes it, including the impermanence the mind has been working with, the arising and passing of thought and sensation that has been observed throughout each section. And it is the path, the practical direction, the teaching points, toward a quality of movement and presence rather than a fixed destination, a manner of being with what is here without the adding of unnecessary suffering to what is already difficult. The second refuge is the recognition that teaching, truth, and path are all available right now, in this room, in the very practices the mind has been working with since this night began. Everything that has happened in this room tonight is Dhamma. The breath practice is Dhamma, the Ānāpānasati Suttas instruction to know the breath clearly, to follow it without managing it, to find in its arrival and departure the simplest available demonstration of impermanence. The body practice is Dhamma, the Kayagata Sati Suttas instruction to inhabit the physical form fully, to know the posture, to feel the weight of the body against the surface beneath it, and find, in that weight, a field of attention broader and quieter than any thought stream. The watching of thought is Dhamma, the Satipaṭṭhāna's third foundation, Citta, the quality of witnessing the mind's activity without being swept into its current, noticing that each thought is impermanent, that none require the mind's active participation in order to arise or to cease. The metta is Dhamma, the Karanaya Metta Sutta's instruction to extend goodwill inward, beginning with the self, because the one who is present in this room right now deserves the same reflex of care that extends naturally toward anyone else who is struggling. Taking refuge in the Dhamma is the recognition that none of this was invented tonight. It has been here, waiting for any mind that would turn toward it. The third refuge is Sangha, the Sangha. In its most direct sense, the word points toward the community of practitioners, those who have committed to the path and are walking it, who meet and support one another and form the living transmission of the practice from teacher to student across generations. In its broader sense, the sense most available to a practitioner lying alone in the dark at an hour when no physical community is present, the Sangha is all of those who have ever taken this path. Everyone who has ever sat with a restless mind and chosen to work with it rather than simply be worked over by it. Everyone who has ever turned toward the breath in the dark and tried to rest the mind on what was already present rather than on the thought streams that offered only motion without arrival. Everyone who has ever lain awake in the small hours and discovered, in the practice, something that made the night different in quality from what it had been before the practice began. All of them are the Sangha. All of them are available as refuge in this moment. There is a comfort available in the third refuge that the other two do not provide in quite the same way. The Buddha's example is the demonstration of possibility. The Dhamma is the map and the method. The Sangha is company, the direct, felt knowledge that this particular difficulty, the night that will not rest, the mind that will not slow, the small hours passing without the relief they were supposed to bring, has been experienced by an unbroken line of human beings who found in the practice something that helped, They did not all achieve awakening. They did not all arrive at the stillness described in the highest stages of the path. But they sat with the same mind, in the same dark, working with the same restlessness, using the same tools. And they were not destroyed by it, and the night eventually ended, and the practice carried them from one side of the difficulty to the other. The refuge the Sangha offers is not rescue but accompaniment, the knowledge that no one who turns toward the practice in the dark is doing so alone, and that this solitude has never been as complete as the small hours suggest. The three refuges address three dimensions of the sleepless night that have been most active throughout this practice. The Buddha's example addresses the doubt, the part of the mind that suspects, in the small hours, that the restlessness is too deep to move through, that the effort of practice is another form of doing when what is needed is the simple cessation of all effort, that this particular night is somehow worse or more intractable than the teaching is equipped to address. The Buddha's own night answered this question in the most direct way available, by moving through it completely, using the same mechanisms the practice has been working with in this room. The Dharma addresses the method, the specific teaching that maps the territory of the restless mind and offers, at each point of difficulty, a precise and tested response drawn from generations of careful observation. Nothing about this night has been uncharted, and the Sangha addresses the isolation, the sense that this suffering is private and unprecedented, which the community of those who have walked this path dissolves the moment the mind turns toward them. The formula itself can be spoken in the dark, silently, in the mind, at whatever pace feels natural to a mind that has been settling through the course of this night. Buddha Sarana Gacchami. Dhamma Sarana Gacchami. Sangha Sarana Gacchami. The Pali words have a quality of their own, a weighted, deliberate sound that gives the mind something to hold with genuine attention. Unfamiliar syllables that require enough care that the mind naturally slows to meet them. If the Pali feels distant, the English carries the same weight. I go for refuge in the Buddha. I go for refuge in the Dhamma. I go for refuge in the Sangha. Let each line land in the mind as a genuine act rather than a recitation, an actual movement of attention toward each of the three objects, one at a time. The mind is actually going somewhere when it speaks this formula, and what it finds in each of those three objects is real, available, and has been present throughout this night. The mind that finds the three refuges tonight finds three distinct resting places within the same difficulty. With the Buddha, a sense of proportion, the restlessness of this night, real as it is, sits within a context far larger than this room and this hour. A human being who began with a mind as conditioned, as restless, and as caught in the chains of craving as any untrained mind found the way through, finding the way by seeing clearly what the night required, without adding to what was already present. With the Dhamma, a sense of direction. The practices are a path that has been walked before, refined across centuries, addressing the specific mechanisms of restlessness with a precision born from generations of careful and patient observation. With the Sangha, a sense of companionship, the awareness that, in this moment and across all the centuries of practice that have preceded this one, Others are doing what is being done here, turning toward what is difficult, with awareness rather than resistance, in the small hours of the night. Each refuge offers the night a quality it cannot generate from within the restlessness itself. The 3 refuges engage the Paticca-samuppada chain at a level the individual practices worked with differently. Each of those practices entered the chain at specific points, the breath attention at Vedana, occupying the space between the feeling tone of a moment and the craving that ordinarily follows without pause. The body practice widening the field of attention until the chain's momentum found less to build with. The watching of thought allowing each link to be observed without being fed. The metta replacing the unpleasant tone of self-criticism with something the chain received as insufficient fuel. The refuges work at a different level, offering the mind an alternative orientation altogether, rather than addressing individual movements of the chain. A mind turned toward the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha is a mind facing in a direction from which the chain's momentum appears as what it always was. A conditioned movement within awareness, not the ground of awareness itself. The chain does not disappear, but its relationship to the mind shifts. The way the relationship of weather to a room shifts when the walls are recognized, at last, as walls rather than as the sky. Return to the formula now, one more time, slowly. Buddha, Sarana, Gacchami. Let the mind settle on the example of the awakened one, a human being in a human night, who found the way through using the same tools, the same awareness, and the same simple willingness to remain present with what was difficult that has been practiced in this room tonight. Let the mind recognize, in that example, that the path is possible, that the mind's nature is not sealed, that what has been practiced tonight is the actual path, walked one breath at a time. Dhamma Sarana Gacchami. Let the mind rest in the teaching, in the breath, the body, the watching, the warmth offered inward, and recognize these as the Dhamma moving through a specific night in a specific life, doing what it has always done when a mind turns toward it with genuine attention. Sangha Sarana Gacchami. Let the mind enter the company of every being who has ever chosen, in a restless hour, to work with the mind rather than be worked over by it. You are in that company now. You have been in it all night. The night moves differently from here. The mind has found, within the difficulty of the sleepless hours, something that is larger than the restlessness and prior to the worry and more durable than the argument the small hours have been making since wakefulness began. The breath simply continues. The body rests in its quiet intelligence. The thoughts continue to arise and pass without requiring pursuit. The compassionate voice has found its natural position. And the 3 refuges stand as the oldest of the night's available resting places, the example that makes the practice possible, the teaching that makes it navigable, the community that makes it something other than solitary effort in the dark. The practice has moved through the full ground of the night now, the breath and the body, the mind and its movements, the heart and its ancient capacity for care. What remains is the simplest part, and the part the entire practice has been clearing the way toward, the willingness to allow the night to be exactly as it is, from within the holding of everything that has been offered, and to rest there without reaching for anything more. The willingness to allow the night to be exactly as it is. This is not a form of giving up. It is, in the teaching, the closest available gesture to the quality of awakening itself, the mind that has ceased to press against what is present, and in ceasing, has found the only form of rest that does not require circumstances to cooperate. The entire practice of this night has been moving toward this willingness, through breath and body, and the watching of thought, and the turning of the compassionate voice inward, and the steady recognition of the three refuges. And now, as the night continues in its own unhurried way, there is one more recognition that makes this willingness available in a way it was not at the beginning of the night. The Buddha walked in the dark too, literally, in specific forests, on specific nights, through specific encounters with fear and restlessness and doubt that he described in detail, in his own words, to the practitioners who came after him. What he walked through left a path, and that path is what has been followed in this room, tonight, one breath at a time. The Ānāpānasati Sutta, the discourse on fear and dread, preserved in the Majjhima Nikaya, contains one of the most direct accounts the Buddha gave of his own night practice. He describes sitting alone in isolated forest dwellings, charnel grounds, remote groves, places the surrounding community considered genuinely dangerous after dark. He describes the specific quality of fear that arises in such places, the sudden sound in the undergrowth, the animal call that the mind translates into threat, the way the body responds before the deliberate mind has finished assessing. He sat in these places intentionally and repeatedly, returning to each one, practicing with the fear rather than finding a way around it. When fear arose, he did not move to a different posture or a different place. He stayed in the posture he was in when the fear arose, and he met it, breathing, attending, knowing clearly that this was fear arising in the mind and body, and that it was impermanent. He chose the dark as a field of practice because the dark makes visible what the light keeps comfortable. The restlessness that runs through the waking night is the same thing he was working with in those forest groves 2,500 years ago. What the Buddha encountered in those nights was not different in kind from what has been present in this room. The mind in the dark generates its weather, the sounds it makes into threats, the thoughts it escalates into catastrophe, the ordinary sensation of physical tiredness that the restless mind translates into urgency and alarm. In the Ānāpānasati Sutta, the Buddha catalogues the phenomena that arose during his forest night sittings: animals moving through undergrowth, unexpected sounds, the play of moonlight on leaves that the mind, primed for threat, read as the presence of something dangerous. Each time, the practice was the same. No, this is fear. No, it is arising in the mind and body. No, it is impermanent. Meet it with the same clear, patient attention that the breath receives. The Buddha's account makes no suggestion that the fear was transcended through some special capacity he possessed, and others do not. He met it the way the practice has been meeting everything in this room tonight, by turning toward it, knowing it clearly, and discovering that what is clearly known loses the power it had when it was only avoided. The steadiness the Buddha brought to those forest nights was not the steadiness of someone who had ceased to feel. His awakening did not remove him from the range of human experience. It changed his relationship to that experience, which is an entirely different thing. He continued to feel physical pain. He continued to experience the body's response to cold, to heat, to exhaustion. He taught, in the Ānāpānasati Sutta, while suffering from a serious illness in the final months of his life, moving from village to village across the hot season, resting when the pain required rest, continuing when the body allowed. The Bhāyabhārava Sutta's account of the forest sittings shows a practitioner who felt the same bodily alarm responses as anyone else who sits alone in the dark, but whose awareness was no longer compelled to act on them, to amplify them, to convert the arising of fear into the full chain of craving and resistance that would keep the sitting mind awake and agitated for the remainder of the night. The difference between that steadiness and the ordinary untrained mind is not a difference in what arises. It is a difference in what follows. The night that changed the tradition's understanding of what a human mind is capable of was a single, specific night. The Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree at Bodh Gaya as the sun went down, having made the resolve not to rise until the path was clear. What followed, across the hours from evening to dawn, was divided in the later accounts into 3 watches, 3 periods of practice that moved through different levels of understanding, each one deepening what the previous had made available. The forces of distraction that the tradition names as Mara pressed at the edges of awareness throughout the night. The pull toward pleasure, the push of aversion, the seduction of doubt, the appeal of restlessness. Each was met with the same quality of recognition that has been practiced in this room, with the steady knowing that underlies all that followed, rather than force or the impulse toward avoidance. This was not a night of bliss or ease. It was a night of sustained, deliberate, and deeply demanding practice. A mind working at the full extent of its capacity, in the dark, with the same tools that have been in use in this room all evening. In the first watch of that night, the Buddha turned the full depth of his concentrated awareness toward the question of continuity, how beings move through existence, what carries the patterns of mind from one arising to the next, what the structure of the repetition looks like when it is seen clearly rather than lived through unexamined. What he saw, the texts report, was the vast repetitive structure of conditioned existence, the same basic patterns of craving and aversion, arising and passing, mind constructing its suffering from the same raw materials, life after life after life. The insight was not comfort, it was clarity, the recognition, for the first time with the full force of a mind completely present to what it was seeing, of the nature of the pattern and of the cost of continuing it unexamined. For the practitioner awake in the dark tonight, the teaching of the first watch is available in a small and immediate way. The patterns of restlessness running through this night are old patterns, familiar patterns, the same patterns that have accompanied wakefulness before. Seeing them clearly, even once, is different from living through them unexamined. The seeing is already the beginning of something different. In the second watch, the Buddha turned his awareness toward the movement of beings through existence, the arising and passing of each life, the way each moment of consciousness carried within it the seeds of what followed. The structure of karma visible as the direct causal logic of how conditioned mind produces conditioned experience. The teaching that emerged from this watch is the one that has been practiced throughout this night in its simplest form. Every arising passes. Every thought that has come through this room tonight has done so. Every sensation has moved. Every moment of restlessness has given way to a subsequent moment that was different in quality from the one before. The second watch's insight is not about rebirth as cosmology. It is about the immediate, verifiable, moment-by-moment impermanence that a practitioner with some stability of attention can observe in the very experience of a sleepless night. Things arise and pass. The restlessness is not permanent. The wakefulness will not last forever. The pattern has a nature, and the nature is impermanence. In the third watch, the Buddha turned toward the mechanism of arising itself, the paticca-samuppada, the dependent origination mapped in the chain, from contact, through feeling tone, through craving, through grasping, through becoming. He traced it forward and backward, following each link to its condition, and in tracing it, understood both how the suffering of conditioned existence perpetuates itself and where the chain can be interrupted. The Four Noble Truths emerged from this seeing: the nature of suffering, its arising in craving, the cessation available when craving is seen clearly and met with understanding rather than fuel, and the path, the practical eightfold direction toward that cessation, the paticca-samuppada that has been present throughout this night's practice, the chain that runs from the feeling tone of a restless moment through to the full wakefulness of an agitated mind, is the same mechanism the Buddha mapped in that third watch. Everything practiced tonight has been working with his map. The breath, the body, the watching, the compassionate voice, the refuges, all of it located precisely on the map he left. The recognition available now, in this room, in this moment, with the night having moved as far as it has through the practice, is that the darkness in this room and the darkness of those forest nights and the darkness of the Bodhi tree vigil are the same darkness. Not identical in every circumstance, but the same in what matters. A human mind, meeting what is difficult with awareness rather than avoidance, finding in that meeting the only ground that does not shift. The Buddha's example is not the example of someone who transcended the difficulty of the dark. It is the example of someone who walked through it, deliberately, using the same basic tools that have been in use in this room all night. The distance between his dark and this one, measured in years or in geography, is irrelevant to the practice. What is relevant is the unbroken quality of the path, the fact that what he discovered and left mapped has reached, still intact after 2,500 years, to this room, to this night, to this particular practitioner sitting with a restless mind in the small hours. The traditional practice of Buddhānusati, the recollection of the Buddha, is one of 6 recollections taught in the Pali tradition as a means of settling the restless mind. The practice is simple. Turn the attention toward the qualities of the awakened one and allow the mind to rest in the recognition of what those qualities represent. The traditional formula opens with the words iti piso, bhagava araha sammasambuddho. Indeed, the Blessed One is worthy, perfectly self-awakened. The recitation continues through a list of qualities: clear in vision, accomplished in practice, knower of the world, unexcelled trainer of persons, teacher of gods and humans, awakened, blessed. The practice is not veneration in the sense of worship directed toward a supernatural figure. It is the mind turning toward a set of qualities that are available in human experience, that were demonstrated by a specific human being and are therefore demonstrably within the range of what a human mind can develop, and resting in the recognition of what that demonstration means. The mind that rests in this recognition finds itself, gradually and without effort, moving into the same quality of steadiness that makes those qualities recognizable. For a practitioner in the dark who finds the formal qualities of Buddhanussati too distant from the immediate difficulty of the night, the simpler version is available. Remember that someone sat with this. He came to that night with the same untrained body, the same restless tendencies, the same basic equipment present in every human mind, without any exemption from the full difficulty of what sustained practice in the dark requires. He sat in the dark, and the mind produced its fear and its doubt and its restlessness, and he met each of these with the simple knowledge: this is arising. It is impermanent. I can know it clearly without adding to it. And in that meeting, over and over, through the full arc of a long night, the chain found less to work with, and the natural stillness that had always been available beneath the surface of the agitation began, gradually and without drama, to be more visible than the agitation itself. That same stillness is beneath the surface of this night. It has been there all along, available at each of the intervals where the practice found its footing. The Buddha's forest nights and the Bodhi tree vigil were not extraordinary because the conditions were unusual. They were extraordinary because the quality of attention brought to them was complete. Every difficulty that arose was met. Every arising was known. Every impulse toward avoidance or escalation was seen for what it was and not followed. This is the quality of practice that the tradition calls samma sati, right mindfulness, not perfected attention, not attention free of wandering, but attention that returns completely, without judgment, without accumulating the weight of its own failures, meeting each moment as if for the first time with the same quality of genuine interest that was present at the beginning. The practitioner awake in this room tonight has been doing this, with the same wandering, the same return, the same instruction to make nothing of the wandering and everything of the return. The quality of practice happening in this room tonight and the quality of practice that happened on those forest nights are the same practice, different in depth, different in duration, the same in kind. The night is moving toward its end. It may not feel that way from inside the wakefulness, which has its own quality of expansiveness, the way a sleepless night can feel like permanent residence rather than a passing through. But the night is a natural event, with a natural arc, and the darkness that the Buddha walked in had the same arc. Evening became deep night. Deep night became the small hours. The small hours became the grey before dawn, and the dawn came regardless of what the mind was doing. The practice of this night has been exactly this, meeting the arc with awareness rather than resistance, finding in each section a way of being present that asks nothing of the night except that it be what it is. And the Buddha's example has been present throughout as the living evidence, present throughout this night, that what is being done in this room is exactly the right thing, the available thing. The thing this particular darkness has always been waiting for someone to do. Somewhere before the dawn, in the third watch of the Bodhi tree night, something resolved. The chain became visible all the way through. The mechanism of suffering was seen at every joint. The question that had driven the practice was answered, in a quality of direct understanding that the words were later shaped around. The night ended and the morning came. The Buddha rose, presumably stiff from the long sitting, and began to walk. Whatever had happened in the night did not remove him from the morning. It returned him to it, more fully present than anyone had been before. The morning coming toward this room will find a practitioner who has also worked through a night, who has met the restlessness with awareness, who has followed the practice through each of its movements, who has taken refuge in the oldest available sources of support and found them real. The morning will come. The practice will have been here. And what the night offered, for anyone willing to meet it with the quality of attention the Buddha demonstrated, will not have been wasted. The practice is complete. Everything that could be offered tonight has been offered. The breath and the body, the watching of thought and the warmth turned inward, the 3 refuges and the quiet recognition that the same path walked before is the path being walked now. All of it has been given, and it was enough. There is nothing left to do. The night has received everything the practice had to offer. You can let go now of the effort to make the night different from what it is, of the watching that checks whether something is working, of the last traces of the managing mind that has been the companion of this wakefulness since the beginning, and that has done its best, and that can now rest too. The breath does not need your direction. The body knows how to carry this night through the rest of its hours. What remains is simply this: the body in the dark, the breath arriving and departing without effort, the room exactly as it is. Whatever comes next, sleep, or the continued quiet of wakefulness, or the slow arrival of the morning, arrives into a different quality of space than the one the night began in. You brought the practice here, and you stayed with it. The practice held. You can rest now.